30 people jailed in Benin Republic in connection with the failed coup attempt earlier this month. Several African nations, including Nigeria, face partial restrictions in the new year as U.S. expands travel ban on more countries. Plus, Morocco launches nationwide emergency relief after flash floods killed dozens of people. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Anne Mwawade. We begin here in West Africa, where at least 30 people, most of them soldiers, have been jailed in Benin Republic in connection with the failed military takeover earlier this month. The soldiers seized state television on December the 7th this year, announcing that the government had been dissolved. However, that takeover bid was thwarted by loyalist forces within the military, backed by airstrikes and military assistance from Nigeria and other West African allies. The accused have been jailed following a pre-trial hearing, facing charges of treason, murder, and endangering state security. In the meantime, Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigre, who reportedly led the attempted coup, remains on the run. Officials say he fled to Lomé, the capital of Togo. Authorities in Cotonou have now reportedly requested Togo to extradite him and other fugitive soldiers. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Addis Ababa for a two-day state visit, marking his first bilateral visit to Ethiopia as New Delhi seeks to deepen ties with one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. The Prime Minister and Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed have held talks covering the full spectrum of bilateral relations, with a focus on economic cooperation, development partnerships, and trade and investment. But during that visit, Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to address the Ethiopian Parliament to highlight India's democratic credentials and frame the India-Ethiopia relationship within the context of cooperation among countries of the global south. He will also meet with members of the Indian diaspora living in Ethiopia. And remember, India is among Ethiopia's top 3 foreign investors, with investments exceeding $4 billion, largely concentrated in the manufacturing and agri sectors. It also marks the second leg of his 3-nation tour after Jordan and before Oman. Come January the 1st, 2026, several African countries will be officially barred, either fully or partially, from traveling to the United States as President Donald Trump's administration expands its migration and immigration travel list. While Nigeria has been added to the expanded list of countries partially restricted from travel, others are Angola, Benin Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Gabon, the Gambia, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Senegal, and Mauritania. The White House says the ban is intended to protect the security of the United States. On its website, the Trump administration says that Nigeria is on the list because of radical Islamic terrorist groups such as Boko Haram and the Islamic State freely operating in certain parts of the country, which according to them create substantial screening and vetting difficulties. Another reason for the ban of many of these countries is the overstay of visas. The White House states that Nigeria had a B1, B2 visa overstay rate of 5.56% and an F, M, and J visa overstay rate of 11.9%. Now, these visa categories from next year will be suspended for new applications under the partial travel restriction, B1, B2 tourist and business visas, F for academic student visas, M for vocational student visas, J exchange visitors visas, immigrant visas also generally restricted without special waivers. Meanwhile, full entry restrictions are being imposed on citizens from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, and Syria, as well as Palestinian Authority passport holders. And joining us now is international affairs analyst Chukwuemeka Eze. He's in the studio right here with me. Thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you for inviting me.
And now, while a number of people are not surprised that Nigeria has made this list, first we're talking about very particular countries, but now we have made the list of the ban. But countries with a partial visa ban, I mean, Nigeria has been named. Do you think that this is inevitable? The country is out of that list. Maybe, do you think for any reason would not have made that list? And should it have made that list actually as a country?
Actually, we made the list based on data and the factors they considered. But series of events, the background before this, put us in the searchlight that most likely will make the list. So look at on October 31, 2025, Nigeria was named a country of particular concern. And since then, we've been in the eye of the global public as a country that has allegedly committed genocide. And for context, genocide or an allegation of it is a very serious matter. Just because Israel was accused of genocide, despite the support of the United States, Israel is still feeling the hunt because of its case or that of its key officials at the International Criminal Court. So once genocide is mentioned, anything can follow it, because the Genocide Convention of 1948 makes that international crime one of universal jurisdiction. So, though without further deviation, I'm just giving a background in international law to show that if a country has traveled through this route, especially with the United States, definitely how will it escape this kind of being declared? We even survived full ban. So perhaps because of that.
Well, if you look at it, U.S. President Donald Trump said that the reason for this slight ban is because of Boko Haram presence and probably this overstay of some of the citizens. But when you look at the security aspect of it, one will ask, shouldn't the leaders be the ones to be affected since they have the sole responsibility of keeping Nigerians safe?
No, in international law, that's not how it works. It is in rare occasions that you select the leaders, especially when they have personally committed international crimes. Yes, we have series of cases in that direction. But this is country-to-country relations. This is state relations. So it is not individual-to-individual relations. So that will form an exception. And more so when they don't name particular targets, so they will have discretion. So it will be it's an elastic situation. So they can do what they want within that bracket. So they are not supposed to name particular leaders, more so when remember Proclamation 10949 named states. This proclamation, I think 14161, named states. So the whole gamut of that proclamation deals with states. So it will be going outside the law of the United States to now use that particular one to zero in on individuals.
Okay. But with Nigeria now facing these partial restrictions, especially in overstay rates, we saw the numbers there, very high numbers. What impact will this have on education, travel, business investments between Nigeria and the United States?
Yes, that number, for me, it's not very high because there are countries there with 13 point something overstay. I don't think it's very high, but basically, remember, it is not just for that. They linked it, it is in addition to the activities of what they called Boko Haram, ISWAP, and all that. So they are not mutually exclusive. So one side of the coin, security issues that will make it difficult for them to actually verify or vet people applying for these visas. On the other hand, overstay. Going by your question, is going to affect Nigeria. Nigeria depends so much on, many Nigerians depend on utilizing their education system. We have so many brothers and sisters there, even repatriation of funds. Besides that, on the African scale, it's going to affect the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which is to be reviewed this year. Remember, AGOA was enacted in May 2000 in the United States, expired September this year, and is supposed to be renewed this year by Congress for it to last for any particular period, but it is hanging in the most of these African countries that should have been lobbying for AGOA to be passed. They are now having problems with the United States.
And now with the full ban on some of these African countries that were mentioned, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and South Sudan, what does that say in terms of regional stability in Africa, especially as they are now fragile states? What's the relationship?
It's going to affect our representation in the global space. Remember that the United Nations Organization, World Bank, IMF, even the SWIFT, when you are giving bank account international, they give you the SWIFT number. It's stationed in the United States. Many activities globally are stationed in or who have something to do with the United States. So I think it's going to affect our representation in global affairs, although it has not stopped our diplomats from going there. But usually, our diplomats, many times they go there, they go with a lot of people. Many of those people who are non-diplomats will be considered non-essential. And many of them will not be granted visa. So it's going to affect us in so many ways. And it's like we have a blot on the escutcheon. We are a blot on their escutcheon. So it's just like somebody, you say this one seems to have leprosy or HIV, the way people avoid. Yeah. So they will be treating many of these African, and in the international space, if you want to enter into certain contracts, and it is discovered that you have this baggage, it's now the diplomatic baggage, definitely is going to affect the way other members of the global community relate with you. Finally, if you want to purchase military hardware, many of them that have their spare parts traceable to the United States, there's usually in the military agreement that before the country they sold it to can sell to you, that you must get their permission. So if you are banned, how will they easily grant you permission?
All right. Thank you very much. International Affairs Analyst Chukwuemeka Eze, thanks a lot for your time and your contribution on Network Africa.
All right. Thank you.
And still to come on the program, Libya's National Museum in Tripoli reopens to the public for the first time since 2011. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Safi's historic old city in Morocco is still reeling after severe flooding caused widespread human and material losses, exposing serious weaknesses in urban planning, infrastructure, and emergency response. Floodwaters rushed through narrow streets and traditional markets, destroying dozens of shops, sweeping away vehicles, and leaving traders facing loss, estimated in tens and some cases hundreds of millions of the currency. Well, residents have blamed years of neglect, drainage systems, and poorly managed public works, especially in concrete structure near the Sea Palace, which they say blocked the natural flow of water to the sea and redirected the floods into low-lying neighborhoods. While civil protection units eventually responded, locals are saying that rescue and cleanup efforts relied heavily on youth volunteers using basic tools as several reportedly lost their lives trying to save others. Anger is now turning towards accountability and compensation, and lawyers are asking the government to officially declare Safi a disaster zone, a legal step required to unlock insurance and state compensation for victims. And joining us now is Sarah Voiten, Moroccan journalist in Rabat. Thank you very much for joining us on the program, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
And who bears responsibility for the repeated flooding in Safi's old city, especially in light of long-standing complaints about clogged drainages, poorly managed public works, and many other complaints?
Well, this is a central question that all Moroccans are asking right now, and rightfully so. But it's important to note that responsibility cannot be reduced to one actor or one moment, because what happened in SFI is the result of cumulative structural failures, not a single error that happened overnight, because the residents of the old city in SFI have been complaining for years about clogged drainage systems, inadequate maintenance, and the vulnerability of the old city. And also several elected officials, including members of the parliament, are saying that SFI has been suffering from long-term marginalization, not just under this current government, but under previous governments. So in that sense, the responsibility is definitely shared across several institutions. And the real issue is not assigning blame emotionally, but asking why vulnerabilities were allowed to persist for so many years in a city that has already experienced floods before.
But residents say that civil protection services arrived late and with limited equipment, with volunteers carrying out most of the rescue efforts. How does the government plan this delay or explain this delay, and why were citizens left to risk their own lives?
Mm-hmm. Yes, these were indeed complaints from residents, and we saw from videos from the scenes that unfortunately volunteers and normal citizens and locals had to risk their lives to help other people in the first moments of the disaster. And it was not until the full scale of the disaster became clear that local authorities and civil protection were present and intervened to make continuous efforts under extreme conditions to help people. However, locals are saying that it was too late because officials are saying that the flooding developed really fast and it happened in the matter of hours. And so by the time protection services wanted to intervene, they were not able to access these areas, and rescue vehicles were not able to get there. But that said, the fact that the floods were unpredictable does not absolve authorities from responsibility, because locals do not have to or should not have to risk their lives to save other people. Yes, the fact that they were quick to step in reflects the solidarity of the Moroccan people, but it also shows gaps in emergency readiness, because in previous tragedies like the one that happened in 2023 with the earthquake, Moroccans were really, really quick to help one another. However, the reliance on volunteers should complement institutional capacities, and people should not have to risk their lives when it is preventable and when authorities can step up and plan ahead.
But what do you think the government will officially declare their Safi catastrophic event state under law? People are asking that it should be declared. Mm-hmm. And what do you think will be going forward so that that does not experience such disaster anymore?
Well, there is no clear indication that the government intends to activate this law, and this has drawn strong criticism, especially from members of the parliament who argue that the conditions for triggering the fund are overly restrictive and disconnected from the realities on the ground, because people lost their livelihoods in a matter of hours. And so they are waiting for the government to say something in this regard. But so far, the head of government, Aziz Akhnouch, said in his recent remarks, he did not really address that. He only focused on assessing the situation, and he said he attributed what happened to fate, but he did not address if the disaster would be classified as catastrophic and how people are going to be compensated. So if that does not happen, and if the fund is not triggered, people are going to wait for if other mechanisms are going to be put in place in order to support them and help them.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah Zouten, Moroccan journalist in Rabat. Thanks a lot for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you.
We head to Libya now, where the National Museum in Tripoli has now reopened to the public, unveiling a revamped, more looking after a decade of closure since 2011 amid a period of political turmoil. Officials are saying the renovation introduces new technological features aimed at improving visitor engagement. The Libyan National Museum is housed inside the historic Red Sarey complex in central Tripoli, and that building was constructed in 1982. The museum officially opened in 1988. According to the museum's official website, its galleries feature archaeological collections spanning multiple historical periods from prehistoric times through the modern era. That museum also includes sections dedicated to Libya's popular heritage, the Libyan Jihad movement, and the country's natural history. And now, did you know the Olowol Palace in Owo, Ondo State in Nigeria is considered the largest palace in Africa, with about 1,000 rooms and over 100 country yards? Well, it is spread across roughly 180 acres of land. It was built in the 14th century. And this ancient palace was not just a king's home. It held shrines, public spaces, markets, museums, and served cultural, religious, and political roles for centuries. It is the biggest courtyard, said to be twice the size of an American football field. Well, that's quite interesting, but keep watching Network Africa for more fun facts about the African continent. That's it on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawade.